Now, during the last 8 years in particular, I have been working as a UNESCO chair on community-based research and social responsibility in higher education. And as a UNESCO chair, I have had the opportunity to look at social responsibility around the world, including in countries like Indonesia, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, Malaysia, Colombia, a variety of countries, not just in Europe and North America.
And what is emerging from this is the trend that I want to first address. And that trend is how students can be encouraged to look at societal engagement as an integral part of their teaching and learning. We used to have in India and still have a system called NSS. It is compulsory national social service, and there are NSS instructors, and there are college professors assigned to be NSS in charge. But students who participate in NSS, that participation is neither linked to their academic discipline, what they are studying, nor it generates any credit recognition for them. So it separates, as Professor Mittal said, disconnects NSS from what they are learning in the classroom, what degree they will get, and what credits they will gather. This is a significant departure in the new context of social responsibility. And this is where the UGC's program on fostering social responsibility, which preceded the National Education Policy, was launched in 2019 when Professor Mittal was in UGC. And that policy basically provides for two important ways in which students should be supported. The first is what has been mentioned, Professor Vasuki
also hinted at that, and that holistic and multidisciplinary curriculum, which is increasingly linked to sustainable development goals. Now, let me give you an example of this. Students of civil engineering are studying various strengths of structures, designs, and they are looking at materials to be used for construction, etc. Does their curriculum today
help them design village culverts or small watershed dams, or they can only design large flyovers in urban cities? Students of architecture are learning planning and building construction designs. Does their curriculum tell them that how high density populations can be accommodated with new standards, new structures, and new materials? Because the pandemic has shown all of us the consequences of not taking into account high density populations in our countries. We are not countries where people don't live. There is no plot of land in India where people don't live and have a livelihood. So how do we encourage our students through the curriculum that they pay attention to sustainable development goals? There is another myth that is currently going on about teaching SDGs, and that is that you can teach one SDG at a time. If you take SDG 3, focus on health, which has become all the more critical in light of the pandemic, then SDG 3 is not just the responsibility of students of medical science or public health. We know from our experience that preventive health, promotive health requires attention to maternal care, prenatal, postnatal, nutrition of children, safe drinking water, and safe sanitation practices. So it is not just the responsibility of medical sciences to teach SDG 3. SDG 3 has to be taught in various other disciplines. Only then action on SDG 3 can take place. So I think what the higher education policy within our national education policy can support is by using this holistic and multidisciplinary curriculum. What is even more interesting, an example of what Professor Mittal mentioned, that she designed certain courses linked to microfinance, local energy, local water supply, local healthcare traditions. The national education policy on page 37 has a whole paragraph on this. She was thinking ahead, obviously. Credit-based courses on community engagement and social service, environmental education, climate change, pollution, waste management, sanitation, conservation of biological diversity, management of biological resources, forest and wildlife conservation, and sustainable development and living. Now, this is a mandate from national education policy. This mandate brings opportunities for higher education institutions to include such courses credit-based, not optional, not something you do because you are interested in learning about it, but integrated in their curriculum. Students of civil engineering, students of planning and architecture, students of biology, students of social sciences, all of them need to be provided opportunity to learn these courses. And then in this student accreditation part, I want to mention detailed attention needs to be given to how we teach. A lot has been written about classroom-based teaching and of late, in the absence of the face-to-face and in the absence of any other opportunity, virtual classrooms are running around the world. But we know that learning happens in the classroom, learning happens also in life. Learning happens by observing phenomena around us. Learning happens by reading. Learning happens by conversation. Learning happens through experimentation. And learning happens from reflection on our own and others' experience. UNESCO is currently undertaking an international study on integrating lifelong learning perspectives to higher education, teaching and research. And why this has become important? Because a large subsection of our society, if you take Indian society, a large section of the society does not go to the university. A large section of society wants, after finishing university and doing some work for relearning, retraining, for continuing education opportunity. And therefore, lifelong learning perspective needs to be brought into the design of teaching and pedagogy for students in higher education. University Grants Commission, in its fostering social responsibility scheme, has already talked about field projects. Professor Mittal mentioned 2 credit course, half of which will be taught in the field. Our students who graduate and then join the government, for example, as engineers or as architects or planners, many of them are recruited these days in municipalities. They don't even know how municipalities are organized. They don't know that there is a constitutional amendment for regular elections of municipalities. They don't know that municipalities have constitutionally mandated domain of work and how municipalities interact with housing societies and resident welfare associations. So when they join service, it takes them 2-3 years to figure this out.
If they go and get posted in a block level where they have to interact with panchayats, they have no idea how panchayats are structured. Now, if they learn this while they are in college or university, if their field projects take them to these institutions and help them understand how they function, help them understand their needs, then they will develop an orientation of service, of finding solutions right from their student life and not wait to graduate and get into an employment. Experiential learning also would push our students to begin to respect local knowledge, community knowledge, knowledge of our farmers, knowledge of our local community leaders, women leaders, as the example Professor Mittal was giving, and many of you are familiar with that. UNESCO is currently engaged in an exercise to define open science. And recently we have been conducting a number of international webinars on this issue. Professor Prabhakar Rao participated in one of those a couple of weeks ago. And in open science, a lot of scientists would think it is about open data, open access, sharing of journal articles, etc. But open science is also about open to society, being engaged in society and being accountable to society. Open science is also being open to different forms of knowledge, not just the knowledge which is produced in universities and in the books. So I think by engaging students through learning in the field, they will develop a sense of appreciation of the knowledge that our villagers, our community leaders, our tribal people, our women have. And in today's era, when post-COVID, everybody is looking for the new normal, a lot of that new normal is going to be based on local indigenous community knowledge as well. Because organic agriculture, organic health, community health, local water conservation technologies, all these are indigenous knowledges, many a times not taught in our universities and colleges. So both in terms of changing the curriculum and adapting it to SDGs and societal issues like the ones mentioned in the National Education Policy, as well as in the pedagogy, in the way we teach, more importantly, the way we stimulate learning among our students so that they carry with them the capacity to learn wherever they are and learn from their own experience and learn from others. Learn by observing and analyzing phenomena around them wherever they are. The second sub-theme I want to quickly talk about is faculty progression. I've taken a quote from National Education Policy. It said,
teachers and faculty are at the heart of learning process. We recognize that, we say that all the time. But if you ask our teachers and faculty members in many of our colleges and public universities, it is very rare
that we acknowledge that they are at the heart of
the learning process.
And therefore, if this expression of the National Education Policy has to be given practical meaning, I have three suggestions. The first is that we should help and build capacity of our teachers to adapt curriculum to local context. While a particular theory may be universal, its manifestation and its relevance must be contextually defined. And this is possible only when the teachers of physics, of chemistry, or engineering, or sociology are encouraged and trained in some way to be able to adapt their curriculum to local context and therefore use pedagogy of interaction in the community for learning. So students' accreditation will only work when we support teachers' training. Invest in teachers' competencies to become engaged in scholarship. Now, around the world, there are lots of
deliberations, documentation, stories, case studies available on engaged scholarship. I want to separate engaged teaching and engaged research, because engaged teaching will help our students to learn from society, learn from interaction. And therefore, I think we need to invest in promoting competencies of our teachers in community-based research as well as engaged teaching. The last point, Professor Mittal already hinted at that. There is an increasing pressure even on our faculty members in colleges and universities to publish. And the publish and perish is a phrase used in academia for long. Publish in certain types of journals. Publish is only in certain language journals. English or other European languages are the dominant ones. Publishing, Professor Prabhakar Rao, I'm sure in this session, will talk about multilingualism and local language relevance in social responsibility. If 85% of our society does not speak English, then merely conducting research and teaching in English in our higher education creates a disconnect with our society. It creates a disconnect with local theories and concepts, as well as in our capacity of our graduates to communicate with local society. So language is an issue, what kind of journals they should write in, but also how do we make sure that their assessment and their incentives structure is linked to promoting engagement and engaged teaching. I know that NAACS certification, etc., has some, but that is underdeveloped. I would appeal to all of you that in this consortium that we are talking about, we should bring examples of how templates can be developed, which are indigenized and localized to be able to incentivize teacher assessment. There are many ways of knowledge mobilization. Knowledge mobilization as a concept has been inducted now in research funding. European Union's responsible research and innovation stream of work, Canadians' stream of work, many streams of work. Researchers are asked, how will you share your knowledge? And the only thing we teach them in universities right now is you share your knowledge through conferences or journal articles. But there are many ways, because stakeholders in research are not just your peers in academia. Stakeholders in research are also various actors in society. And if you want your research to have impact on policy making, if you want your research to be used by Zilla Parishad and municipality, you have to find ways in which you share your findings and help them make use of them. So this knowledge mobilization methodology in various ways needs to be also included in training of our teachers, but also in incentivizing their assessment. So let me just end by talking about how social responsibility can be carried forward. I think many universities have begun to write a new strategic vision. When they write a strategic vision, they tend to keep the three missions separately. They write some element of the vision about teaching, which I prefer to call learning. And they write something about, research. Nowadays, it is very fashionable to say we are the top 10 research universities in the world or in the subcontinent or whatever. And they write separately about service, which gets equated to seva in a sort of a patronizing sense. I prefer to call it service. The flip side of service is empowerment of our community. So when we write a vision for the next 5 years, national education policy is now expecting our higher education institution to produce a societal vision. I would suggest that you try to integrate the three missions so that no mission is ghettoized, no mission is put in a corner. Many a times, people who do teaching in our universities are not the ones who are receiving big research grants and are not the ones who are doing service. Service learning, engaged teaching, and engaged research can be integrated. And therefore, all faculties, all departments, and all levels of university education can be brought to bear. I think as part of the vision, outward focused, societally engaged, and accountable
is a trend which we need to follow. The last point I want to make is that changing the culture of our higher education institution will require some effort. If we are not going to be Lakir ke Fakir, doing the same thing again and again, then institutional leadership and culture change is essential. What gets rewarded, what gets promoted, what gets recognized will make a lot of difference, both from the point of view of students as well as from the point of view of teachers. In partnership with the Association for Indian Universities, our chair had been running a webinar, and now we are offering courses in future on social responsibility. And I look forward to this opportunity to take our collaboration forward. Thank you very much.